Race is not a political weapon to settle every issue the way one side wants. America is not a racist country.
I am shocked and a bit embarrassed for him.
Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, of course, a key figure, hated by the left because he happens to be a black Republican. And these are folks that ask Candace Owens, ask Shelby Steele, ask Thomas Sowell. The most hated people in America by Democrats are black Republicans. According to the Democrats, they are race traitors, which is why you saw, by the way, Uncle Tim trending last night. I'm not kidding. You had white people calling Tim Scott Uncle Tim after like Uncle Tom, which is just delightful. You know why they were pissed at Tim Scott? I kid you not. The reason they were pissed at Tim Scott is because Tim Scott had the temerity to say America's not racist. So leftists were like, that's a lie. America is racist. You know how we know America's racist? Because we're racist. There's a certain irony to people whining that Tim Scott said that America is not racist. Tim Scott should know he's a black man in America who has reached wild levels of success. They say, how dare you, Tim Scott, say that America is not racist? Yeah, Uncle Tom. It's like, no, you're just racist. That's all. Anyway, so Tim Scott gets up and he gives what was, I think, a pretty good speech. I think, frankly, it started off a little slow and then it really heated up. And by the time he got to the end, it was really, really good. So he begins. It's the only State of the Union response address I've heard that I actually thought was of benefit to both the Republican Party and the person who gave the speech. I've seen a lot of them, ranging from Marco Rubio and the famous water bottle thing to Bob McDonnell, the former governor of Virginia, speaking to a House in like the sort of stilted way. In any case, here was Tim Scott. He says that basically Joe Biden made a promise and now he's violating his promise, which of course is true.
He promised to unite a nation, to lower the temperature, to govern for all Americans, no matter how we voted. This was the pitch. You just heard it again. But our nation is starving for more than empty platitudes. We need policies and progress that brings us closer together. But 3 months in, the actions of the president and his party are pulling us further and further apart.
And of course, this is true. And then he continues and he says, you know, Joe Biden wants to define what your life is going to be like for you, but that's not the way that America is supposed to work. He says the American dream is about you defining that for yourself.
The beauty of the American dream is that families get to define it for themselves. We should be expanding opportunities and options for all families, not throwing money at certain issues because Democrats think they know best.
Okay, 100% true. Now, here's the part that really, really pissed off the left, is when Tim Scott started to talk about race, because black people are not supposed to think this way, according to Democrats. Democrats are racial essentialists. They believe that black people are all supposed to vote Democrat because they say that black people have no agency in America because of white supremacy. But Tim Scott says, no, black people do have agency because all individuals in America have agency. And Tim Scott says a mature adult thing, which is just because you have experienced racism from individuals does not implicate the entire system of the United States, which of course is true. As a Jew in the United States, I've experienced some anti-Semitism. I was the #1 target of online anti-Semitism in 2016. That does not mean that America is systemically anti-Semitic. Okay, so Tim Scott makes a rather mature point here. Right, so he starts off by saying, listen, I've experienced some racism myself. Again, you're not supposed to say this if you're Tim Scott, because the immediate follow-up for Democrats is if you say I've experienced racism, the immediate next line is supposed to be because America is racist. That's how you get the bizarre spectacle of LeBron James sitting on his $1 billion while doing propaganda work for China, talking about how America is deeply racist and terrible to black people. Here's Tim Scott saying, listen, I've gone through some racism myself. It happens to lots of people.
I get called Uncle Tom and the N-word by progressives, by liberals. Just last week, a national newspaper suggested my family's poverty was actually privilege.
But, says Tim Scott, that does not mean that America is racist. He says the only thing that's racist right now is the Democrats who are pushing racial essentialism and racial division in order to gain what they want politically.
100 years ago, kids in classrooms were taught the color of their skin was their most important characteristic. And if they looked a certain way, they were inferior. Today, kids are being taught that the color of their skin defines them again. And if they look a certain way, they're an oppressor. From colleges to corporations to our culture, people are making money and gaining power by pretending we haven't made any progress at all, by doubling down on the divisions we've worked so hard to heal. You know this stuff is wrong. Hear me clearly. America is not a racist country. It's backwards to fight discrimination with different types of discrimination. And it's wrong to try to use our painful past to dishonestly shut down debates in the present.
That's spectacular stuff. Fantastic, spectacular stuff there from Senator Tim Scott. And this, of course, earned him the unremitting ire of the media, because how dare he point out the absolute truth, which is that they use charges of systemic racism in order to cudgel you into silence, in order to shut you up, in order to violate your individual rights. How dare he? And Tim Scott didn't stop there, right? He actually explained how they do this. He said, you guys, you want to racially polarize us so that you can use racism in order to get us to shut up about your violations of individual rights and constitutional bargains. He says, for example, he used H.R. 1 as an example, right? This is the federalizing of basically all state congressional races and all elections. And H.R. 1 is a disaster area. It basically enshrines the possibility of voter fraud and enshrines ballot harvesting. It gets rid of voter security measures in virtually every state. It federalizes elections. That is a violation of the Constitution, because states are supposed to draw up the way that they do their own elections. That was not given. The states never would have allowed the federal government to do that, ever. Okay, in the compact that was the Constitution of the United States. It never would have gotten signed if that had been in the Constitution of the United States. It's just blatantly unconstitutional. But more than that, Tim Scott makes the point, you guys are about the Georgia voter law. The Georgia voter law is not racist. The Georgia voter law is more permissive than, for example, New York's voter law. But you guys are lying about that, because the whole point of you constantly talking about race is so that you can ram through an agenda that really has nothing to do with race.
This is not about civil rights or our racial past. It's about rigging elections in the future. And no, the same filibuster that President Obama and President Biden praised when they were senators, the same filibuster that the Democrats used to kill my police reform bill last year, has not suddenly become a racist relic just because the shoe is now on the other foot. Race is not a political weapon to settle every issue the way one side wants. It's far too important.
He is, of course, exactly right about this. But the fact that he's exactly right about this is why the media are so upset about it. So MSNBC had a whole panel where they said they were embarrassed for Tim Scott. They weren't embarrassed for the senile old man warbling out $10 trillion of spending to an empty chamber filled with uselessly masked morons. No, they weren't embarrassed for Biden. They're embarrassed for Tim Scott for saying true things about race. This is MSNBC in a nutshell right here.
People see him as being genuine in trying to work on criminal justice reform. And rather than make even one single salutary point on that, he came out and lied about the Georgia bill, saying it's easier to vote in Georgia than in New York. I am shocked and a bit embarrassed for him. This was a lost opportunity. Tim Scott has an opportunity to make his mark on criminal justice reform, and this ain't going to do it.
She's unbelievable. He tried to pass a criminal justice reform bill last year, and it was filibustered by the now Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. By the way, if anybody ought to be embarrassed by anything, it's Joy Reid, who came out in the last 2 days, and said that she jogs double masked outside like an idiot after being vaccinated, like a pathological lunatic. I'm talking about somebody who's a complete embarrassment to the public discourse. Joy Reid, each and every day, proves herself an embarrassment to the public discourse. Okay, but don't worry, the media, the same media who are ripping Tim Scott up and down because Tim Scott's very, very bad, they're praising Joe Biden to the skies. So Jonathan Capehart told the obviously abject lie that Joe Biden, his address had the same energy as other addresses, which is like saying that a potato battery has the same level of energy as a Tesla battery. No. Joe Biden was like, if you could have hooked up a heart rate monitor to Joe Biden, he was barely alive. Okay, he was nearly flatlined last night. But here's Jonathan Capehart trying to pump him up.
I thought this was, despite, having maybe a quarter of the people who are normally there, I agree with Lisa. It was a much more intimate speech. But I also think, not being in the room, but watching on television, it still, for me, had the same energy and I think a little more focus because we were not distracted by taunts or boos.
So much energy, so much brilliance, so much wonder. And if you look at the headlines from the media, it's the same thing. The media are just the propaganda wing for this party. The actual headline last night is Joe Biden proposes more spending than has ever been proposed by man or God. And old man shouts at moon, right? Those were the two headlines. Instead, here are the headlines from the Washington Post, which are just propaganda headlines. Biden pitches his ambitious investment and tax plans as he recasts the role of government. By the way, it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 reporters to write that headline. Biden pitches his ambitious investment. It's ambitious, and it's an investment, you see. They use exactly the same language that he uses. It's not an investment. It's not his money. I cannot, quote unquote, invest money that I remove from you and just give to another guy with no return. That's not an investment. Okay, here's another headline from the Washington Post. All of this was on the headline of the Washington Post page today. America is on the move again. Biden seeks to reassure nation reeling from a pandemic in remarks to Congress. Who's reeling? Maybe you're reeling. I'm not reeling. I'm in Florida. Everything's great. We're good. Here's the New York Times front page. Okay, this is from their webpage. Here are all the articles. You ready? Biden makes case to vastly expand government's role. We have to prove democracy still works, he says. President Biden laid out an ambitious agenda to rewrite the American social compact by vastly expanding family leave, childcare, and health care. Taken together, the collection of initiatives suggests a breathtaking scope of change sought by a president who spent a lifetime as a more conventional lawmaker. The succession of proposals amounts to a risky gamble that a country deeply polarized along ideological lines is ready for a more activist government. And then there's a picture of him being applauded, of course, by Nancy Pelosi and Kamala Harris. And then underneath it says, Vice President Kamala Harris and Speaker Nancy Pelosi make history on dais. Wow. Ladies with their ladiness. President Biden kicked off his address with a string of words no American president has ever said before. Madam Vice President and Madam Speaker. Okay, I have a question. Define woman. I've been informed that gender is completely malleable, so why do you care? You can't even say that those people are women if they don't say they're women. So, well done, media. According to the media, Tim Scott was terrible last night and Joe Biden was magnificent. And then you wonder why trust in the media is at an all-time low. Here's the thing. All this is going to come home to roost. Joe Biden ain't going to be able to pass all of this stuff because he can't. Reconciliation doesn't apply to many of the things that he's talking about. He's going to try and ram through as much as he possibly can very, very quickly. He's going to overheat the dollar. The dollar is going to inflate. There will be actual costs to you. There will be costs to your business. There will be costs to your life. And then Joe Biden will wander off. He'll just wander off just like he frequently does. Just kind of like walk off and you won't know where he is. And then there will be a legacy written about him by Jonathan Alter or by Michael Beschloss about what a wonderful president he was, and you'll just be stuck with the bill. So recognize what this was last night. It was an attempt to bludgeon you into submission by saying America is bad, and also trust this nice old man to completely change the nature of government in the United States. Don't fall for it. Just because the nice old man seems like a nice old man doesn't mean that what he's proposing is nice or decent or good or prosperous for the United States. It's none of those things. Did you know that every single like creates one additional leftist tier? That is just science.